Okay, good morning. It's about a little before 6:30 and it's time to do another garden walk. It's hard to believe it's August. And this is I planted these tomatoes I think in June. And I know Craig bought the plants for me and he told me he had a hard time finding any because it was past the time when people usually planted tomatoes. And these are all heirloom, and I've never had any experience with this particular one. It's called Rose, and it is forming tomatoes underneath there, but it'll be a while before they're ripe. And these two at the end are the Black Prince, and it looks like their little green tomatoes are darker color than the rose tomatoes, but they are getting quite large. And then we come to this bed, and this tomato I love the very best. It's an heirloom beefsteak. And like I said once before, I didn't have any luck with heirlooms, but this year evidently I am, because I am going to make sure I have this tomato next year when they're ripe. And I don't see any ripe one. I bet there is one down there. I'll look. For some reason, they like to get ripe down underneath where they're hard to see. But it's quite large, and when you open it up, it just looks good inside, like an old-fashioned tomato should look, and it has a lot better flavor. And let's see, I think that's still part of it. This tomato is the one I just bought at a nursery, and it's got tomatoes in there. Probably some of those I'll pick today. And so that's these two beds, and if I can get by here without getting caught in the the tomato. Okay, this is the end that I had cleaned out a lot of the fennel out of. There's still fennel going to seed there, but here is the beans coming up that I just planted not too long ago. And the hollyhock that we cut down, I see, is beginning to sprout back up. And my verbena is doing quite nicely. And then on this, of course, the nasturtiums are doing poorly. But the feverfew, I finally figured out it probably won't bloom till next year. And it'll be interesting to see if it's the same thing I had in Idaho that grew all over so pretty and so wild. But I think it came with the early settlers of our area, that they brought it in as an herb. Okay, and then this is now when it is so hot, the tomatoes burn. See, it's yellow on the top there, but actually underneath it would be red, but I'm going to leave it a little bit yeah, see, it's not really red yet, so that needs to go longer. And there's some more under there that are turning, and I sort of like it. I've only had one day so far that I've had enough to make a sauce that lasted a couple of times. I mean, two meals. But I like it that I'm not overwhelmed yet with tomatoes. And this is the one that always surprises me with all of a sudden a huge squash. And I love zucchini. I would grow it even if I didn't like to eat it, just because I think it's a pretty plant. I like the yellow blossoms inside, so I like it. Then the pepper plants, and I want to tell you, I came out to pick some parsley, and I had a little jalapeno right next to it, and it was blooming and getting ready to make little jalapenos. And I don't see as well as I used to, and I snipped it off, and it's got just a little stub there. I felt really bad, like I shouldn't come to the garden. And so that's this one. And oh, I'll show you the cucumbers hanging on my wire trellis here. There's one underneath here that's stunted. I think I'll just have to pick it off. But here's one I'm going to leave for another day probably. And then this cucumber over on this side, I'm sure has cucumbers that are ready. And I knew I had planted some yellow squash. I didn't know where. Tom's not really fond of yellow squash, so what I'm going to do, I'm probably going to pick that little one today, and I'm going to cook it in a little water, mash it up with butter and salt and pepper, and just eat it myself. And well, anyway, that's what I'm going to do with that one. Let's see. Have we got any zucchinis? I don't think there's any zucchini. Well, there's one down there that'll be probably tomorrow that I'll fix. Okay. Now, my broccoli, I'm sure, has some sort of a disease going on it. So I'm not sure how well it's going to do. But see my cabbage down underneath there? And it's feeling hard inside. So I'm not sure when I'll go ahead and pick that. But it'll be soon. And then I think this will do much better. Hey, and I've got a good bug on it. Oh, good. That'll rescue it if that good bug comes and kills the bad bugs. Yeah, there's some there too. They're little ones. I wonder if they're the bad bug. I think they're going to be good bugs. I don't know about them. No, I think they are. So, anyway, and not anyway. Also, I haven't seen any broccoli come yet. So I'm hoping that starts making broccoli. Okay, here's the other cucumber growing over to this side along with the squash. And I saw, there it is. Can you see it in there? Okay, and it's going to have a little zucchini. Okay. And my comfrey is growing. And the little red sages are growing. But again, oh my poor nasturtiums. And there's the hollyhock, and I'm going to show you. Okay. And that's my basil that I pick daily. My daily basil. And this is how the sunflower is turning out. My guardian sunflower. So that's how my garden grows in August. I'll show you one more thing. And I think I'm going to pick it today. And that's my eggplant. Ah, yes. Nice looking eggplant. So that is going to be picked today. And this bed over here, I'm going to start the water in this morning as soon as I get done with this. And that's about how my garden grows. This is an Asian basil. I like it. It has a little bit different flavor. And then this is one of my lavenders that are doing quite well. I lost a lavender over in that other bed, and it was a different type. It looks sort of like a weed, and one day I pulled it out, replanted it, and it just struggled, and finally yesterday I said, enough of that, and put it out of its misery. So, good morning. Have a nice day. This is how my garden grows in my 80s.